Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin, and today we're going to be giving our spoiler-free thoughts, opinions on Smile 2. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at FilmOptix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin. It's finally here. Smile 2 is here. I'm very excited. But before we dive in to this episode, have you been watching anything to get you into the spooky season mood lately?
You know, I was considering rewatching Smile 1, but I didn't end up doing it. Did you rewatch before seeing this one?
No.
Because I know my sister did. And,
did she?
Yeah, she wasn't actually a fan of the original one. But I took her to see this one, and she said she liked it a lot better.
Interesting. Yeah. The first Smile, as we know, this whole, I guess not necessarily a franchise as of yet, but since this is a sequel to Smile, for those who don't know kind of like the history of Smile before we dive a little bit deeper there. So this whole situation came about from a short film that you can find on YouTube called Laura Hasn't Slept. Devin graciously gave me that information earlier today because I was scratching my head about it. But yeah, so the first Smile movie originated from that short film.
And I believe the main actress in Laura Hasn't Slept was the initial Smile lady in the first movie, like that first scene.
Yeah, the first Smile girl from the first Smile movie. And from what I can remember, when we covered the first Smile film, it was originally supposed to go straight to streaming, was it not?
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be Paramount Plus, but then they last second changed it to theaters, and then it worked out really well for them. Yeah,
so well that, of course, we're getting a sequel, and we have a sequel. Devin and I went to go see it last night. It's just titled Smile 2. This is easily one of the best original horror films or concepts we've had in a very long time. I remember when the first one came out, it messed with my mind.
And I remember it took you a little while to actually go see it. You had to build up some courage.
It did. Yes, it did. And I felt confident enough to go see Smile 2. I was like, I've seen the first one. I can handle this. Dude, just wow.
It's a step up in almost every way.
Yes. And I was like, this is even creepier than the first film. And the first one still creeps me out. And it's like, I almost want to say it's so good that I never want to see it again. Or it's going to take me some time to watch these movies again. Because especially Smile 2, it was messing with my mind. I had a little bit of trouble going to sleep that night. Definitely had to fall asleep with the TV on. I'm not going to lie.
You should have just thrown on Aladdin and you could watch her as Jasmine instead of Skye Riley.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's what I should have done, man. But yeah, so outside of, you said you didn't see Smile 1 or rewatch it before seeing Smile 2. I have not either. I'm like, man, I kind of want to, but then again, I don't after seeing Smile 2. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. It's not that I'm good as in it's a bad movie. It's just I've officially been creeped out this spooky season. And of course, Smile 2 was the one to do it. But Devin, have you been watching anything spooky related, or are you kind of just rolling with the punches with the Penguin and of course Agatha all along?
Well, of course, last week I had to go see Terrifier 3 and show some support for Art the Clown.
Art the Clown. That's right. You did say that.
It's pretty wild that it was number one at the box office last week. The most indie movie possible has made it all the way up to the top.
That is actually very impressive. I've never seen the Terrifier films, as Devin knows, for all of our listeners out there. I think maybe one day, man. Maybe one day. And like, I know it's slasher, but like people told me, and I think you've mentioned it, it's like a lot of body horror as well.
Yeah, it's just like the best like gore and like the best like practical effects that you'll see in a movie.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Outside of that, let's see I'm not sure. I mean, I did tweet about this on my personal account the other day, but I've officially watched both seasons of Yellow Jackets. It was phenomenal, and I cannot wait for season 3. There are a lot of questions that I have. It's one of those survival horror shows that keeps you hooked. It's almost like Lost or Twin Peaks mixed in with Lord of the Flies and a little bit of Big Little Lies as well. But, you know, it's its own thing for sure. But it does borrow aspects from a lot of other popular concepts, as most TV shows do today. But Yellow Jackets itself, I don't believe it is based off of like another intellectual property. It's kind of just its own thing. But yeah, man, it's great stuff. If you have not watched it, anyone out there listening, season 1 is on Netflix as of like the beginning of October, excuse me. And yeah, you'll have to watch the second season on Paramount Plus. It's kind of how they get you a little taste on Netflix, because it's like if you put both seasons on Netflix, no one's going to subscribe to Paramount Plus. And honestly, I signed up. I did like a 7-day free trial. I watched season 2 in like maybe 4 or 5 days, because it took me a little bit longer because I wanted to kind of recreate the feeling of watching this weekly as both seasons came out. And it was specifically for season 2. Our friend Jared, who used to work for Heavy Spoilers, the YouTube channel, he actually did a full breakdown of season 1 and season 2 episode by episode. So what I would do is watch one episode and like, man, like that's amazing. And then go watch this heavy spoiler breakdown of it. So it helped me because I felt like I didn't have to like blow through certain, like every single episode. And then it helped me dissect the show better because number one, it's not like we were covering it. I just wanted to watch it at my own pace, but I was able to do it within the 7-day free trial. And I canceled right after. And actually asked why I canceled. And I said my favorite show has season has ended. Like I logged in for one show. They actually have that as an option when you're canceling your subscription. Like, why did you cancel? So
yeah, they know people got to game the system with all these streaming services.
Yeah, it's getting a little ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie, but hey, you know what? While everyone's fighting for your attention to like watch and stream stuff at home, should be taking your butts to the theater to watch Smile 2. So without further delay, we're going to get into our Smile 2 review here. So we will be right back after this introduction to Smile 2.
I'm Parker Finn. I'm the writer, director, and producer of Smile 2.
That's a pretty cool shirt you got. Want me to sign it?
I knew that if I was going to approach a sequel, I needed to find a character that I could find something thematic to explore there. The trick to unlocking it was discovering the character of Skye Riley.
Ladies and gentlemen, Skye Riley.
Skye is this famous star who is surrounded by people, and yet she's incredibly alone. It's a frightening situation for anybody to be in. In the Smile movies, the entity is passed from victim to victim by forcing them to end their own life in front of a witness, and that witness becomes the next victim. It gets into the cracks of their brain, and I really wanted to find new ways to trick both Skye and the audience.
Stop smiling at me! What I love about Parker is how confident the filmmaking was. It really does run the gambit of a more internal movie to just being completely unhinged.
The sequel goes bolder, it's way more off the rails, it's nastier, bloodier, and everything you loved about the first film, we do that 10 times bigger.
Skye, pull it together and get back out there.
I keep seeing his face everywhere. He keeps 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 seeing his face everywhere. He keeps
And we are back with our Smile 2 review. Again, this is spoiler free. We are not going to be giving away any spoilers because, man, there are a lot in this movie. And I want everyone listening to this to have the most organic experience watching this film because I'm saying it right now. This is the best horror movie of 2024 so far. Like, even better than Long Legs, in my opinion. I liked Long Legs, but I felt like it was a bit overhyped from the talk itself, but it's still a very good horror movie. But I think Smile 2 takes the cake, you know, as of December 16th, 2024 of us recording this. As of right now, I think this is the best horror film that we've seen this year. But this film is written and directed by Parker Finn, and the synopsis is as follows. About to embark on a world tour, global pop sensation Skye Riley begins experiencing increasingly terrifying and inexplicable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressures of fame, Skye is forced to face her past. And this movie stars Naomi Scott as the lead. We have Kylie Gallner and Drew Barrymore makes a nice little appearance as well. She's in the credits, so we'll just throw her in there, as well as Lucas Gage and Peter Jacobson, just to name a few. There's not a lot of like big surprises of who's in this movie. It really is just about the journey that Skye Riley, played by Naomi Scott, goes through. And if you're familiar with the first film, all the same rules apply. So, you know, we're not going to talk too much about the first film, but for those who have seen it, because it's been, how long did the first one come out? Was that 2 years ago, it felt like?
Yeah, 2022.
Yeah, 2022. So it's been about 2 years. There is an entity that latches on to people's
Trauma.
Thank you. Yeah, it latches onto their trauma and it begins feeding. And the worse and worse it gets, I believe they have 7 days from once the entity has latched on to that person. And how that entity latches on to the person is that the entity, it gets a little confusing, not really, but it host jumps from person to person. So once it's done feeding on one person, it then has to kill that person in front of someone else. And then the entity jumps to another host and the whole cycle starts all over again. Am I explaining that right, Devin? Or is there a better way to explain that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot to explain. So basically just, you know.
Because we don't really know where it originates from, you know? So it's like, all we know is that it latches on, feeds off someone's trauma, and then when it's done, it kills that host. But in order to jump to another host, it has to kill its current host in front of someone else. And then that entity or that spirit latches
keep the chain
on.
alive.
Yeah, so it's like a chain. But like I said, we don't know where the origins are. And I'm wondering if we're ever going to get an origin, or maybe we don't need one.
Smile, Origins of Evil.
I like it. I like it, man.
Just like that. I think that was the Flanagan Ouija one, wasn't it? Ouija, Origins of Evil.
Yeah, Origins. Yeah, Origins. I saw that one. That was.
I mean, he made Ouija a good movie, so it's just how good Mike Flanagan is.
Yeah, dude, I agree. But Devin, let's get into the weeds of this film. We both saw this last night. Give me your thoughts and opinions on this film.
Yeah, like you mentioned in the little recap for the first movie, I think when that movie first came out, I don't think anyone really had expectations for that one, because just as a concept, it's pretty silly when you think about it. Like a smiling, like curse chain entity, like on the face value, it just doesn't seem like much of a concept to really build a horror movie, let alone horror franchise off of. Because we had similar movies in the past, like Truth or Dare, I think is one that came out with a similar premise. And those were just really like silly and goofy and just weren't very high quality. So when Smile 1 first came out, I think it took a lot of people by surprise just because of how nuanced it kind of made that like novel concept and turned it into something that was it kind of made you think a little bit, and it kind of obviously scared you along the way. But I think people definitely have higher expectations for Smile 2 now that they've seen the first one. I think with that becomes greater expectations, and I think it's good to know that they have definitely improved upon almost everything from the first one. Not that the first one was bad, but they just kind of step everything up for the Smile 2, which is great to see. Because I think it definitely meets my expectations going into this one. It's a lot gorier, like there's a lot more like body horror in this one than the original one, which is sometimes hard to look at on the screen, but you just gotta bear through it. I think sometimes. I know some people are gonna be covering their eyes, but there's definitely a lot to look at there, and there's also a few really good jump scares in this one. The first one had a few of those as well. But this one I think steps it up even more. And I just think Naomi Scott was a great choice. I've always enjoyed her work, and I think she's definitely killing it as the pop star type. And I just think overall the movie just kind of looks better aesthetically than the original one. And I think the scares are heightened. Just the ambiance and just the feel and the sense of dread is it's just heightened from the first one. And it just feels like at any moment there's going to be a scare. You just don't know when. Like that's just like the perfect way to build up for a horror movie. And I think it does it so well where you really never know where it's going to come from or what it's going to be. Like you think you can try to guess what it is, but they do such a good job of hiding it and making it come out of nowhere. And it's not even just horror in this one. I think there's even some comedic moments in this one that the first one didn't have that definitely stand out. Like towards the end, there's in her apartment, there's a group of Smile entities that are.
Dude, I can't like
the
that.
theater was cracking up during that one.
It was so freaky though. But like, yeah, it did have that underlying like, okay, this is kind of funny, but not like in a, like a comedy film funny, but it's like, it does.
Just how ridiculous it looks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's goofy, but it works.
Yeah, I think it just does a good job of building off of the first one. We don't get too much more as far as like lore or background or story. Just kind of keeping up with the idea from the first one where it gets passed on from person to person depending on who is in the vicinity of the initial death. And it definitely has a great twist where it is a pop star, so she definitely has more of an audience that she has to worry about and more people in her life that might have some foul intentions, and that's definitely another added part that increases the horror value, where it's not just the Smile curse that's after her; it's like her own fans that can be after her in the same way.
Yeah, and also to just piggyback off of that before I give my thoughts, another aspect that makes this movie more interesting is that Naomi Scott's character, Skye Riley, is I guess you could say a recovering drug addict. So she's also dealing with that aspect. And you see a lot of that in the film. So it's kind of like her big return back to the platform. And I feel like that's more of a premise instead of a spoiler, because I would not consider that to be a spoiler.
Yeah, because she has like self-inflicted trauma she has to deal with, not just external factors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because of her past. 1000%. But yeah, I just thought it just makes this movie even more interesting, where we know why. And
you might not even end up rooting for her by the end of it, depending on how you feel.
Yeah, that is very true. Because, dude, as far as my reactions go, I will say first and foremost, if you are not a fan of body horror or a horror movie that makes you feel so uncomfortable that
it kicks up like by 10 times from the first one.
Yeah, but it doesn't overdo it, which is good. It's it's doing a sequel right without ramping it up, much like I think a good example of just like maybe a character itself is from like Guardians of the Galaxy with Drax. Like, people love Drax. I love Drax as well. But I do feel like, I think it was in Guardians 2, they're like, oh, like people really like Drax. He's really funny in the first movie. And they just dialed that aspect up to like 11. Or maybe a better example would be Thor: Love and Thunder, when it came to the comedic aspects versus Thor Ragnarok. where it's like, hey, Taika Waititi's a funny director. You know, he knows how to make people laugh. Let's like turn that up to like 11 or 12. And, you know, some people like that, some people don't. But I feel like in terms of Smile 2, it turns, you know, it doubles down on a lot of things, but it doesn't overdo it. And I actually wanted to read Tyler Calvert. He's a YouTuber at It's Tyler Calvert on Twitter. You can definitely find him there. I wanted to read his little reaction here. He actually says Smile 2 does double down on what makes the first film so effective. A pulse-pounding psychological thrill ride that captures an overwhelming feeling of paranoia the deeper the story goes, and plus an all-time performance from Naomi Scott. So I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. Again, definitely follow Tyler at It's Tyler Calvert on Twitter, and you can find him on YouTube as well. But yeah, that's like, he nailed it with just everything that it made me feel. Like, Naomi Scott does a fantastic job in this movie. And like I was saying before, if you are a fan of like body horror, like gore, and just the complete uncomfortability of a horror movie, this is for you.
Yeah, there's certain parts that even had me like almost looking away. Like,
oh yeah,
there's the specific part where she's in the rehab center that had me like squeamish a little bit.
But it's ooh man, like it's not in it. Part of it isn't necessarily the visuals, but the sound design of the film, where you're hearing the entity's voice, and then even not only that, but the almost like primal like cries and scream
like in the score itself.
Yeah, in the score itself from Naomi Scott's character, Skye Riley, and they just pull it off. It's so unsettling to listen to, but it works. Where it's like, especially at the very end credits, where they're playing that score with her, like her cries and like her moans, and that in the credits. I'm not sure if there was a post credit. I didn't really stick around. I'm assuming there wasn't, but you have to let me know if there was.
I didn't stay.
Okay, but yeah, it really, like, this movie messes with your minds, not in a bad way, but it's like it sticks with you. Like, I'm still thinking about it, and the red herrings that happen in this movie, I was not expecting. Like, that is how you do a red herring. Because if you've seen the first Smile, there are certain sequences of events that seem so real, and that by the time that sequence is over, things start to unravel and it plays out in a different way. And it's like, there's a lot more of that in this movie, but they carefully craft it throughout the film, because as two people, Devin and I, who have seen the first Smile, we already know how the rules work. When you're watching this film, they do re-explain it to people who have not seen the first Smile movie. And I took one of my friends to go see it, and they hadn't seen the first Smile film. And I was wondering if they were able to grasp onto it, but there is a bit of
I think the only crossover is that cold opening.
Yeah,
with Joel from the first one.
That's right. Yeah, I think that is that opening scene. But outside of that, I mean, there is a bit of an expedition dump as to how it works. So I feel like they put that in there for, like, in mind of people who probably aren't going to go see the first one and who are just seeing Smile 2 altogether. But when I went to go see when I took my friend, she said she started to understand it a little bit even before. But us knowing what we know, we're trying to figure out what happens to Skye Riley in this film.
It's not too much to pick up on the initial concept itself. It's just like when the psychological elements come into play, it's when things get like fuzzy.
Exactly. But it's done so well, where I was like, oh my gosh, like, talk about plot twists. Phenomenal. Executed so well, where it's like, even you yourself feel like you're in like this sleep paralysis fever dream of an experience. And as you second guessing everything, And like, heck, I'm not going to lie. As soon as I got out of there, it's like, I couldn't really look anyone in the face for a while.
No one smile at me anymore.
Like, at least for the next week, no one smile at me.
It's weird. Like, it's just, when you think about it, you stop to think for a second, like, no one really does smile like that. Like, it's just not a thing that happens. That's why it just looks so unsettling.
And it works so well where it's like, there's always been like this person was like creepily smiling, but it's kind of like a half smile, half I want to murder you look, where it's like, if you're covering the top of one of whoever, is smiling in this movie, if you're covering the top of their face, like from their nose up, you're like, oh, it's just like a nice smile. And then boom, as soon as you cover like the bottom smile or their smile, and then from the top up, it's like, okay, that's where the meanness, I guess you could say, or like the evil or like the craziness kind of comes in. But man, it was crazy. And I love how I myself felt so paranoid watching this film, where like this is a psychological horror film, thriller, whatever you want to call it, through and through. Like it messes with your psyche. It is like the suspense is there too. Like you said, that the jump scares in general, and it's not like a jump scare like, oh my gosh, I was startled, but like it was like legit.
The way they're done, the way they're pulled off, like specifically the one in the bed was just like,
dude,
that was mind blowing. I haven't felt this uncomfortable since we went to go see, what was it, The Night House? Because that one had a crazy jump scare, and I was just not expecting that. Or it's like, okay, like they're drawing it out, and then it's like boom, like because your mind always seeing all these horror movies, your mind just tries to fill in the gaps. Like, okay, there's going to be something pop up here, and it's going to be over there, but it's just never what you expect. Yeah,
this Smile 2 subverts your expectations when it comes to jump scares, and it makes you think how other horror movies in the future, or just in general when it comes to horror, thriller, what have you, or just like psychological films like this, how they handle jump scares in the future. Because I think it was done so well. And like, dare I say, I would say Smile 2 is better than Smile 1, but that's not saying that Smile 1 is a bad film. It's almost like, I guess in gamer
There's
terms,
also probably like a pretty big budget increase, I would guess.
Yeah,
which definitely helps.
Sure. The only thing I would say is that there's one portion of the CGI towards the very end where it looked a little iffy, much like the first film, honestly. And I can't reveal of what that scene is, but Devin, if you know, like it was like a reveal of something. And I was like, okay, it still looks iffy. I was like, the rest of the movie looked great, but it was just like that one specific scene, without giving anything away, of course.
Yeah, without going too much into it, I still don't really know how I feel about the ending. Like, I think the build up to it was great, obviously. I just don't know how I feel about that reveal at the end, or if it is even real in the first place. There's no way to really know.
I think, without giving anything away, I think it was, but I liked the ending. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so clever. And it almost leaves you on a cliffhanger in a way, or it's like, how we've talked about in the past where some movies just end. And this is one of those films, but it's left open for interpretation, I think. And I like it when films and TV shows do that, where there's not necessarily a definitive ending, much like something like The Green Knight, starring Dev Patel. That, or Never Let Go. And we were talking about that a few
episodes. The first one had a wild, somewhat divisive ending as well.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I did like the ending. I was like, oh, that's clever. And I'm wondering if they make another film, how will they tackle it? Or are these just separate stories, not necessarily too connected, again, outside of that first opening scene in Smile 2 that connects it from Smile 1. Because the rest of the story, I don't believe there's any other returning characters from what I can remember.
No.
So it's like, I wonder if these are just individual events that happen with, time may go on. We don't even know how far into the future Smile 2 is versus Smile 1. So I think they're just separate events, even though it's called Smile 2. It's just the next in the franchise. It's not necessarily trying to follow a set story with specific characters, because the only real character that keeps making these appearances is the entity. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting, but yeah, I wasn't sure what your thoughts were on the ending, but yeah, it's interesting to see, and we'll definitely talk about it off air a little bit, because I would definitely love to know what your thoughts are. Can't give anything away for the for the listeners at home, but let's get into our final thoughts and our ratings here for Smile 2. Devin, what are your final thoughts and ratings for this film?
Yeah, final thoughts. I think it's a great sequel that really ups the levels of everything that the first one did successfully. There's more jump scares, there's more gore, there's more body horror. There's just pretty much more of everything, and done in a good way where it's not overdoing anything, but also, like I said, it's a step up and improvements along the way. So I think overall, it's a great entry into a new, possibly blooming horror series that we have here. Who would have thought such a small little horror movie from 2022 would have a nice sequel offspring, and who knows what's possible from here. As far as the score goes, like I said before, I don't really know how I feel about the ending. Didn't really leave me too satisfied. It's very similar to the first one, where it is very ended as an ending, and it just leaves you questioning a lot as far as what the rest of the movie was. This one even more so than the first one, where it's just like, oh, what did we even watch specifically up to that point? But yeah, I'd probably give it a solid 78 overall. There's definitely a couple minor issues here and there, but nothing too crazy. It is a little long. It comes in at around 2 hours and 7 minutes, which is a bit much for a horror movie, but I think it fills its space pretty well. There's a couple moments where you're just waiting for something to happen, but that's also part of just the scares in general, just trying to figure out when something's going to pop up.
Yeah, I do agree with when it comes to the runtime. I believe the first movie was only around an hour and actually, no.
It was hour 55.
Yeah, it was an hour 55. So it is around the same. Oh my God. It's like as soon as I opened up Smile, it's like one of the, okay, I gotta.
I also wanted to mention, I think one of my favorite parts about this movie is that the stuff they show in the trailers, from what I saw, is really only the first half of the movie, which was really welcomed.
Yeah, from what I remember, I've only seen it was the very first trailer in theaters. I did not look at the second trailer or the final trailer or anything like that. So from what I remember, I don't know. Again, I can't remember the last time I actually saw this.
Yeah, I only saw the trailer before other horror movies.
Yeah, same. So it's it's not like the trailer was playing in every single theater, because obviously, if you are going into a horror movie like Smile or Maxine or Cuckoo, you're going to get more of those horror previews playing before the film. It's not like they're going to, it's not like they're going to play the Smile 2 trailer during the previews of Inside Out 2 or something like that. They would never do that.
It's happened before.
It has happened before. Unfortunately, it has, but traditionally and typically speaking, it rarely ever happens. But yeah, so for whatever reason, I thought that the first Smile movie was only around an hour and 30, but yeah, it looks like Smile 2 is just a few minutes longer. but the pacing is there. But it's like if I go back and watch it, how will I feel about the runtime? Because it didn't feel slow. But with all that to say, I would probably give this like a solid. I might have to go. I might have to go with a 90 out of 100 here, because like there's always room for improvement.
That's in your top 5 list of all movies, maybe possibly.
I know, like this year, this is a really good film, but it's so creepy that it's like, will I want to see this? Like, I might need to take like a decade off from watching this. But it's so good where it's like, I don't know if I need a second viewing at the same time, because it's like, it's so stuck in my head to where it's like, okay, I think I'm fine. So you gave it a 75. I could be wrong.
78.
Devin is giving it a 78 out of 100, and I am giving it a 90 out of 100. So the official podcast score between both Devin and I's score is going to be an 84 out of 100, which I think it puts that on par right now for the tomato score, since as of this recording, Wednesday, October 16, 2024, it has not hit theaters until technically previews start tomorrow on the 17th, but it will be out this coming up weekend, 2 weekends before Halloween kind of hits all together. Actually, I was going to ask you really quick, what are you going to be for Halloween this year?
I mean, anybody can be a smile entity.
Oh my God. You just have to.
You got to be committed.
You smile that long enough, your face is going to get stuck like that. All together. But yeah, an 84 out of 100 from Devin and I. By the way, I'm being Waldo this year. Where's Waldo?
Classic.
A very easy, simple thing to do. And with all that said, that does conclude today's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Optix. That is Optix with an X. And don't forget to share an episode of our podcast with a fellow movie lover out there, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Spread the love for the Film Optix podcast. And now let's take a sneak peek of what's coming up next on the show. So coming up, we're going to be covering movies, maybe, possibly, I'm assuming Venom, The Last Dance, We Live in Time, maybe. It's a possibility.
Anora comes out this weekend.
What does?
Anora.
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about it.
The most hyped movie of the year on Twitter, at least.
Dude, I gotta watch Saturday Night. I need to watch We Live in Time. And I guess I gotta watch Anora as well. And then Venom comes out next week, I think, as well. So there's a lot to choose from. We will keep you posted on social media altogether of what we're going to be covering. There's a lot to choose from, and honestly, as much as I love it, there's a lot to watch right now, there's also just too much to watch at once, because it's like, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. But as far as previous episodes or recent previous episodes you can listen to our Joker Folie à Deux episode, aka Joker 2, as well as our The Wild Robot review and our breakdown of The Penguin episode 1. We will be covering that series in full once that has wrapped, as well as Agatha All Along. We did an episode 1 and 2 breakdown of that as well. So with all that said, thank you all for listening. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and stay connected with us by following us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, all that social media garbage for the latest updates. That was Devin, and I'm Christian, signing off. And remember, let's put a smile on that face.
Yeah, the real Joker.